presidents to represent me.
What's up? Joe Hova from Knight Joe Turntable, also joehovasmf.com. So, we may have dropped the ball on this album. I don't know if you heard of it. It's called Reasonable Doubt, by this guy named Jay-Z. Dropped 20 years ago today. And since we kind of dropped the ball, I wanted to at least share my thoughts about the album and where it stands for me in hip-hop. So my backstory, obviously if you listen to the podcast, you know that I had to discover hip-hop. I wasn't brought up around it, and Jay-Z is one of the first artists that I heard. I didn't hear him until, Hard Knock Life, but I became a fan. I started going back, and once I got to high school and I could buy my own albums and stuff, after I heard Blueprint, I started going back and I bought Reasonable Doubt. I think it was like my junior year of high school, and to this day, I still have that copy. I need to buy a new one, but it skips from The Evils from Dead Presidents to The Evils. Like each of those songs. So Dead Presidents skips, and then Feelin' It skips, and then The Evil skips, because I used to rewind those so much. Like when I would hear like a lyric, I'm like, oh my god, this is mind blowing. Like on The Evils where he's saying, I kept feeding her money till it started to make sense. I was just blew my mind because it was like a double entendre, and me being 16, 17 years old, I'd never heard anything like this before. So I went back, and it's just such an iconic album. You got Irv Gotti on production, you got Ski Beach, you got DJ Premier. Just the story between Big and Jay, where they're writing, they're in the Brooklyn's Finest session, and they keep pushing the pad back to each other, not realizing that neither of them write raps. Just stuff like that, and Jay coming up with a sample for Politics as Usual. Memphis Bleak on there. I mean, it's such an iconic album. Mary J on the intro with Can't Knock the Hustle. It's just a beautiful, beautiful album, and to Jay tweeted earlier today that this album saved his life. Just this one album, and this was his plan. He was only gonna do one album. That was it. He was gonna be done after one album, and it sparked what he is today. So, it's really cool to see what Reasonable Doubt has done, not only for him, but for hip-hop, because around that time, of course, you had like Raekwon with the Mafioso stuff, but this kind of like became later in hip-hop, not right then, but later down the line, people started like wanting to mimic like what Jay was doing on Reasonable Doubt, and it's a well put together album, from the samples, the lyrics, the melodies, just everything on that album is it's so beautiful. One of my favorite albums. It's in my top 5 albums ever, at the least. At the most, it's top 3, which is kind of crazy to me because Outkast ATLiens is also in my top 5 albums ever and my top 3, and they both came out this year, not this year, but they both turned 20 this year. And the third album, if you're wondering, Prince's Purple Rain. So, those are in my top 3. No specific order, but Reasonable Doubt, it's one of the best albums I've ever heard. I can play it from start to finish plenty of times in a row, and it's just, it's one of those albums that it makes you listen, and it makes you appreciate the music a little bit more. So that's my take on it. It's top 3 album to me. It's easily one of the greatest hip-hop albums ever. So if you've never heard Reasonable Doubt, go give it a spin. There's always time to find great music, even when it's 20 years old. So thank you, Jay, for this album. Shout out to Profex for making me do this, and we'll be back on Knights of the Turntable very soon. Make sure you subscribe on iTunes. Also, if you follow us on SoundCloud, like, repost, and follow us on SoundCloud as well if you don't follow us on there yet. So, Joe Hova, Knights of the Turntable, joehovasmf.com. Make sure you check us out, and we're out of here. 20 years.